Penguin Random House Canada Audio presents The Only Café by Linden Macintyre. Read for you by Greg Campbell. Secrets, silent, stony, sit in the dark palaces of both our hearts. Secrets weary of their tyranny, tyrants willing to be dethroned. James Joyce, Ulysses. Shatila Camp, Beirut, September 18, 1982. She lay there as if she was sunbathing in the heat, and the blood running from her back was still wet. The murderers had just left. She just lay there, feet together, arms outspread as if she had seen her savior. Robert Fisk, Pity the Nation. According to Lieutenant Elul's testimony, while he was on the roof of the forward command post next to the Phalangists' communications set, he heard a Phalangist officer from the force that had entered the camps tell Eli Hobeya, in Arabic, that there were 50 women and children, and what should he do? Eli Hobeya's reply over the radio was, "This is the last time you're going to ask me a question like that. You know exactly what to do." And then raucous laughter broke out among the Phalangist personnel on the roof. Kahan Commission Report, February 8, 1983, Tel Aviv, Israel. 1. Cyril. 1. The reading of the will was a formality. Pierre's widow had been running things for years, 5 years and 2 months, to be precise, since June 26, 2007, the day he'd vanished. Pierre Cormier had led a complicated life, much of it unknown even to his closest friends and kin, and so the mystery of his disappearance lingered. But by the summer of 2012, investigators had concluded to the satisfaction of insurers that he was dead. It was time to lay the mystery aside, embrace administrative closure, imperfect though it was from an emotional perspective. And so, his little family assembled in a lawyer's office late on a Wednesday afternoon in August. It was, all things considered, a congenial gathering. The young widow, the amicable ex, the adult son, all more or less resigned to the fact that how he died would remain forever unresolved. Financial realities had long ago been accommodated by the power of attorney Pierre had granted Lois in the days before his disappearance. She had been, these past 5 years, scrupulously fair. The son, Cyril, didn't really know why he was there. He was working as a newsroom intern at a television network, and an early departure from a busy office didn't look good. But the lawyer had insisted. Formality or not, it was a necessary bit of business. From the corner office on the 42nd floor of the Draycourt Tower, they could see Lake Ontario, and through the late summer haze, at least 100 boats, sailboats, powerboats, ferries. Presumably, it would have been on everybody's mind that Pierre Cormier had spent his final days on a boat. The visitors were unaware that the vast office they were meeting in had once been his, so diligently had he kept his corporate and private lives apart. The lawyer, Ethan Kennedy, was personable and frank. It was all straightforward, a matter of some explanation and some signatures. There was, however, one small item that they might find amusing, what seemed to have been an uncharacteristic bit of mischief by Pierre. It had been so out of character that Kennedy had forgotten all about it by the time he'd found the piece of paper in the file. It was a brief instruction for a post-mortem celebration. In the event of his death, Pierre wanted no funeral, no memorial service. He made no reference to the preferred method for the disposal of his mortal body, burial or incineration, but he did want a small social gathering of his family and closest friends, the format to be styled on a function he had once watched with interest on television, a celebrity roast. Those present at the roast would each give candid assessments of his character and life, and by the end of the event, each would hopefully have achieved an understanding of Pierre that no individual among them had fully known. He included a short list of people he wanted to attend. None of this made sense to Cyril. His father even contemplating a memorial event, let alone a roast? The father that he knew had been a very private man, a paragon of professional and personal discretion, an introvert, in fact. His only socializing had been work or golf-related. "So who's on that list?" he asked. Everyone in the room that day was on the list, including the lawyer and also a police officer named Nicholson. The lawyer vaguely remembered who he was. There were familiar names from Pierre's time at Dracor, including a former Dracor chairman, M.J. Brawley, since deceased. The only name that no one recognized was Ari. Ari what? Aggie Lynch, the ex-wife, asked. That's it. Just Ari. Kennedy resumed his examination of the one-page document. He was someone he knew from a restaurant or pub they frequented somewhere in the East End. There's an address, Danforth Avenue. Aggie was skeptical. I never ever heard him mention anyone named Ari. And a pub? I can't imagine Pierre frequenting some dive in the East End. What did you say the name was? Aggie was a snob about the geographic destination East, though she'd been born and raised on Canada's East Coast, and her ex-husband was of Middle East extraction. For Aggie Lynch, anything east of the Don Valley meant vulgar and not a little unpredictable. Kennedy glanced again at the single page he was holding. The pub is called the Only Café. I think I've driven past it. By the way, it's also where he wanted this event, however we describe it, to be held. Furthermore, he wanted this man named Ari to preside. The East End, said Aggie Lynch. There was a vaguely incredulous expression on her face. When would he ever have been in the East End? Lois? Lois Klein, the young widow, nodded. I recall that there was someone he'd meet up with occasionally at a little pub I'd never heard of. Someone from back home, I thought. He wrote that, 5 or 6 years ago? It's dated 6 days before he disappeared, the lawyer said, in June 2007. Back home? You mean Nova Scotia? Aggie asked. No, said Lois, Lebanon. It was 5 years ago, Kennedy said. We all know the kinds of pressure he was under, but I think we can assume that this was whimsy on Pierre's part, his way of making light of a sad event whenever it transpired. He was a young man. I'm sure he thought this was far, far down the road. Aggie Lynch presumed to speak for all of them. Well, whim or not, I think we all agree on what you can do with that document. Lois was nodding. The lawyer was already reaching toward the shredder. I'd like to have that, Cyril said. The neighborhood was unfamiliar to him. At the bar, Cyril asked for Ari, not really expecting anyone to know him, not after 5 years. But the man behind the bar nodded and told Cyril that Ari hadn't been in that evening, though he was a regular. He comes and goes, the bartender shrugged. How long have you worked here? 18 months. It was a noisy place, long and narrow. It was dark, mostly lit by a row of candles jammed in bottles along the bar and old lawn sale lamps on small wobbly tables against the wall. He sat on a stool and ordered a beer. The music was from the 80s, and the crowd, mostly men, was also of his father's generation. He recognized the clash. Should I stay or should I go? It had been the question at the forefront of Cyril's mind for 3 weeks, since the meeting with the lawyer. He now knew that single sheet of paper off by heart. Roast, the only café, Ari. He knew the words, but not the purpose. The mystery behind the words intrigued the journalist he hoped he would become. But he couldn't escape a sense of menace. Finally, he shook himself. Come on, wake up. It's just a pub. He was my dad. What am I afraid of? He went. The decor was self-conscious kitsch. A Rolling Stones poster, Mother Teresa, Che. Faded prints of old impressionists. A portrait of Van Gogh with a bandaged ear. The bar seemed stocked with affordable hard liquor, scotch and rum and rye, a few bottles of predictable single malts. But there was an impressive display of bottled beer, many brands he'd never heard of. A sign above the cooler read, The Hall of Foam. There was absolutely nothing about the place that would have appealed to the father that he knew. He sipped his beer, eavesdropped on a quiet conversation about city politics. Cyril hadn't voted, but was interested in the drama. The bartender paused in front of him and nodded at his glass, but Cyril said that he was fine for now. Then he asked, What's over there? He pointed toward a heavy curtain just as someone walked through carrying a mug. Coffee shop, the barman said, if that's your thing. I think I'll check it out, said Cyril. Can I take my beer? No problem. Though it had the same seedy ambience, it was a quieter place. There was more room and more comfortable furniture. He could see the potential on this side of the establishment for a small private gathering. The only cafe was, Cyril decided, exactly the kind of place that would appeal to him and his friends. relaxed, ironic, respectably grungy, unassuming, and cheap. Many of the tables were...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?